Hey guys, today's layout is all about embellishing your 4th of July layouts. Hi, I'm Katie Taylor at scrappinkaty.com, where I show you how to preserve your family's memories through the art of scrapbooking.
I was looking through some 4th of July photos the last couple of days, and I came across these older photos from 2017, and I haven't scrapbooked them yet, so I thought this would be a perfect opportunity. I did go ahead and print a 5x7 and a 4x6 one of this one with me, and then two of our boys. And then you can see I made 3x4s on a lot of the other ones. And then I've gone ahead and I've pulled out some paper that I think I'm going to use. Since a lot of these photos have red in them, and red is really hard to match, I'm going to try to concentrate on blue paper. More specifically, the Secret Sea. It's kind of a darker blue. And then I'm going to bring in red for embellishments and stuff like that. So the Boho Vibes has this really fun pattern. To me, it almost looks like some sort of firework. There's the back side to that. So I've pulled that. And then we have the 6x6 in color DSP as well as the Brights. Now the in color has the Secret Sea. And if you haven't seen the new patterns for the 6x6 DSP, I love them. And one of the reasons is this stripe right here. The back side is that one, which is pretty too. But I'm loving that stripe. And then we also have that stripe in the Brights as well. And so we've got that I may use. This is going to be real red. And then there's a stripe back here that's the real red. But you can see, don't you just love those patterns? So I'm going to do that. Now, I'm only pulling in a few pattern papers because the sketch I've decided to use is from our volume 4. And you can see here, it has a lot of photos. And so there's not a lot of space. Right here, I have a plan for this circle, as well as these tiny little circles. And then, of course, because I have the 3x4s, some of these photo sizes will change. But you can see the majority of this is just going to be the base. I'm going to do some stenciling, maybe some mixed media, a little bit here and there. But I don't need a whole lot of pattern paper, which is good because I have all the colors in my photos that are going to mimic the 4th of July. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this out, get some things cut, and I'll be right back.
The first thing I'm going to do is pull out my stencils. I am looking for some that will mimic fireworks. So I found this sunray one, and then I'm going to look through the other ones and find a star. I do end up finding that, so I'm going to put that aside and then work on my embellishments. I am wanting to create some red, white, and blue embellishments using the Round We Go. So I'm going to pull off the die cuts that I need and then go ahead and measure those and cut down some of these 6x6 DSPs. I like to die cut 2 sheets at a time. Makes it go by really quickly, and then I'm just going to fill up this other side of that plate with those circles, and those will be layered on top of these little Round We Go pinwheels, or whatever you call them. I'm not sure what you call them actually. So I'm going to run this through my die cut machine and then cut all of my pieces, and then now it is time to actually put these together. So you can see I have 2 or 3 piles of 2, and then this real red, there's actually 3 pieces. So all you'll want to do is accordion fold these. Now you'll want to make sure there is definitely a little bitty piece. It's got kind of like a mitered corner. You want to make sure that that is going over the end of a regular piece. So you'll measure that out and then just fold all of these. Now, another thing about this Round We Go is it has 2 sides. You can use the rounded edge, or it also has kind of a sharp edge. Now to glue these together, like I said, there's this little one that kind of has some cut in corners. That goes down on top of a regular piece. Now here is where I realize it's really easy to measure when you're only using 2, but on this larger pinwheel, I'm going to do 3. And I realized that I did not fold them correctly. So I'm just going to make sure what I'm doing here, and then I'm going to end up going back on this one and folding in the opposite direction. Now, this is where good quality paper comes into play. If I were to accordion fold this back and forth with a flimsy paper, it probably would not work. Now on this one, again, I'm making sure that the sharp edge is on the outside. I prefer to use a glue gun for this. And then I just use scratch paper or scratch cardstock and put that glue gun down and then put this little circle on top. Now I do end up messing this one up. I end up fixing it in the end. The secret for a larger pinwheel not only is more of the pieces, remember this one is 3 and all of the Secret C ones are 2, but the secret is also not making all the pieces meet in the center. And I end up figuring that out here at the end, and I have to correct it. But no harm, no foul. I just kind of take that off and redo it. Now here is where I am adding glue and putting on the little centers that are also cut with that die cut. And then here I have kind of disassembled this, and I'm making sure that there is an actual circle or a space in between all those. I did bring out that Secret C one to make sure that I am actually making it larger. And then I'm just going to re-adhere that middle one down. I did end up cutting one piece. I wanted another red one. And then I'm just going to make this a half one. It's going to go under 2, so you won't really even be able to tell that it's a full one. So keep that in mind also if you are working with the Around We Go die cut. Now, the Around We Go die cut is on Last Chance. I'll leave that link down below, as well as all the links to the other products that I used, and you can grab that. You can use this for many, many, many things. So to mimic this one layout, this is the right side. And remember, there was a big circle. This is where I'm going to use the stencils. Now, since I am just working on my regular surface, I have just adhered some removable labeling tape to secure my stencil down to my white cardstock. And then I'm using the Real Red ink and then just a blending brush. One thing I did not want to happen is I didn't want this ink to come off as pink. So I'm going to make sure that I'm going over what I've already done, as well as making it really dark for the rest of it. Some of those I'm not going all the way to the edge, but it's still going to have that firework look. So isn't it amazing that if you do something in a different color, it actually looks different? Because I'm pretty sure this was meant to be a sun ray. Now, by adding the stars in the Secret C, this is just going to add another level of dimension, as well as really make it look like fireworks, in my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you think. So again, I'm adding the Secret C ink with a blending brush. One thing about this, again, just like the Real Red, is I want this to be a deep blue, but for a couple of reasons. Number one, I've already added the Real Red. And so it was hard to tell, but you definitely can tell the Real Red going across those stars. So if I make it really dark, then you can't see those lines. Don't you just love that? It's so cute. So I did the left layout. You can see I didn't do it in its entirety. And then I'm taking a Real Red Stampin' Blend, and I'm just flicking that against the lid. And take a look at just all the splatter that this does. I'm going to repeat that on that right layout as well. And then I am going to bring in my papers and my photos. So on the left layout, you can see here, I've trimmed down these pieces of DSP, and I'm just going to layer them. Now, the sketch calls for one solid photo mat, but this layout, because I wanted to use not only the different patterns of paper, but I think it just has kind of that fun and funky vibe to it. So by staggering these DSPs, I think it just adds to the layout's ambiance, I guess, if for lack of a better word. So I'm going to adhere these layout or these photos down, and then I'm going to come back on the right layout and I'm going to rough out these photos before I actually really press down on them. So this photo is of my sister and my niece, and I've put it in the center. Well, not center, but pretty much the center. And then I have three 3x3 photos that I'm going to put over to the left. And again, before really adhering these down, I kind of just draft them out, and then you can see I could move those up a little bit. And then I have a stack of photos that is going to be adhered using a flip flap, and then that top photo is of me and my niece. So before I do the flip flap, I definitely wanted to bring some of that patterned paper over. So I just have little pieces. I didn't want to use another 6x6. So I've put that center piece, and then this little piece, I'm going to start cutting strips. Now I do decide that it needs to go up and down, kind of like the left layout. So I'm going to put some at the top and the bottom, and then I end up putting another piece at the top. You can catch that toward the end of the layout. Now, as far as the flip flap goes, there are a lot of ways that you can adhere flip flaps to your layouts. If you follow me here, you know that I prefer to adhere that down to my layout base and then cut my memory protector. So on this, I've put my photos in my flip flap, and then the photo that's going to be adhered down to my layout, just kind of held that against that flip flap. And then I'm going to adhere it down and then pull the rest of that backing off, make sure my photo is straight, and then take a bone folder and really make sure that that flip flap is adhered to my layout base. And I am liking that. So now it is time to add these embellishments. So I'm going to have 2 of these down over here. I need to make sure that that is under the flip flap. And then I'm going to have one at the top right of the left layout, and that will kind of overlap the photo. And then I'm going to build another little cluster at the bottom left. So one thing I love to do with my photos that have a lot of dead space, like there's no reason why you need to see our legs. And then, so that's a perfect opportunity for me to build this little cluster. So I have kind of that little faux red little embellishment. And then I'm going to add some 3D foam tape to adhere down the secret C. One thing about this is I'm going to have to double up on my 3D foam tape just to make sure that it is over the height of that red one that I've already adhered down. Now, I did think that this one needed a little third, so I'm just taking one of the centers and just putting it on there, and then I did end up adding a little silver circle. Now for my title, I am going to be using the Party Pennant alphabet, and I'm going to be cutting USA out of some silver glitter paper. I'm also going to cut it out of some real red cardstock, and that's going to allow me to kind of double up and add a shadow for this title. Now what I really wanted to do is I wanted to kind of mimic this card that I made yesterday and posted to Instagram. But instead, I decided to just go with the plain silver. There were just a lot of stripes and a lot of patterns on this layout anyway. So if I tried to do it like that card, I just think that it would have gotten lost. Now, there is this word celebrate from one of the stamp sets. I believe it is the Wildflower Celebration. It is no longer available, but if you have this is a wonderful size of celebrate. I absolutely love it. I'm inking it up in real red ink. And then there is this little kind of label, and I'm inking that up in real red ink as well. Now, as far as the date goes that I'm going to be putting in the label, I'm using the tags to go, and I'm going to ink that up in the secret C ink and stamp that down. When I stepped back and looked at it, it wasn't really straight, so I'm going to try it opposite. I'm going to try to stamp the date and then come back in with the label and stamp over it. And then I can fussy cut those out. You can't really see this here, but I end up using the original one. It is a little bit crooked, but it's okay. So I'm going to fussy cut out the title. And then on this one, because I stamped both of those, there wasn't enough white on there. So I am really trimming that close to the real red ink line. And then I'm just going to adhere that down onto some scratch white cardstock, making sure to leave a border around it. Then when I cut it out, it'll look like I cut it out with the border already attached. Now it is time to work on my title. I have decided to put it up at the top, even though the sketch calls it for it at the bottom. I am just going to move this over slightly so it's kind of underneath that little embellishment at the top right. And that's going to also allow my celebrate to not be so crowded on the left. So for the silver portion of my title, I'm actually using dimensional elements to adhere that down. It's going to give a little bit of dimension. Plus, I think it just adds with the shadow of the real red cardstock. So I'm going to get these adhered down. I end up having to kind of really maneuver the A to get it under. And then I am going to attach the celebrate. The thing about the celebrate is because some of it overhangs the USA that's already up on dimensional elements, I just need to find out which letters hang off. And then the letters that are actually on the U, I can actually add a little glue dot with my Take Your Pick tool and just get that adhered down. Now for my journaling strips, I just took some real red cardstock cut to 1/2 inch and then layered on some white cardstock cut at 3/8 of an inch and then various links. I did end up cutting some silver stars, and then I am going to do some thread jumbles. Now, for my thread jumbles, I just use regular sewing thread. This happens to be silver, and I just cut 3 links and then jumble those up and then adhere those down to some glue dots. This is a thicker thread, so I'm adhering it down to a glue dot and then kind of folding over a top glue dot, and that's going to allow me to just kind of get that in with my Take Your Pick tool to the various spots. I end up having 1 at the top and then 2 at the bottom portions of the little embellishment clusters. I'll pick it up here in just a second and show you how that looks toward the end of the video. Now you can just take some of the little stragglers and just kind of poke those around and make sure that they kind of are hidden or not hanging off your layout. Now for my stars, I'm just going to adhere those down around the clusters. Usually I try to do odds, so you're going to see 3 around the larger clusters and then 1 at the top. I do end up cutting a smaller silver circle for that little blue one at the bottom left. And then I'm just adding some red gems from my stash onto the centers of all of those silver papers. So now all my embellishments have a silver top, and then they will also have a red gem in the centers. So you can see all of that here. You can see the dimension of my title, my thread jumbles in and amongst all of those little things. I really wish I knew what those were called. Let me know in the comments, please. And then that is that. I absolutely love how this layout turned out. Using a sketch from our CD sketchbook made it really easy, but I was able to adapt it not only to fit the papers that I wanted and the theme, but also the size of photos that I have. You can find everything linked down below that for the products that I used as well as our sketchbook. And then don't forget to hit that subscribe button and sign up for notifications so you won't miss another crafty video. Thanks so much for stopping by and watching. Y'all have a wonderful weekend.